Hello, my name is Joshua Gilliland. I'm the Western Region Sea Scout Commodore. This video will discuss best practices for boat acquisition and how to conduct a feasibility study. It's a fact of life with Sea Scouts that eventually you're going to get on a boat. Now, you don't need a boat to actually have a Sea Scout ship. There are many successful ships without boats at all. But eventually you're going to get on one, because that's kind of the purpose of our program, is to eventually get on the water and have fun. So if you are looking to acquire a boat, here are some tips and best practices in doing so. First off, think of the adventure of having a boat. You get to go places. You can see beyond the horizon. There's exploring. This sounds like a fantastic idea. Let's go get a 90-foot boat and have some fun. Well, the challenge that you have with dreaming big and wanting to go out and just get a boat as quickly as possible is, imagine it is a 70-ton puppy that can eat you. There are fundamental questions you have to ask first. Do you have a home for it? Is there a place where you can dock it? Is the marina where you're looking to dock it deep enough for that boat? Questions along those lines, such as fuel and being able to clean up after said boat, because it's like a giant puppy, and that's what you have to consider when you think about getting a boat, because it is a huge commitment, and that can detract from actually running an effective Sea Scout program. So our agenda will be identifying program needs, doing a reality check when you consider getting a boat, the program benefits of boats, finding the right boat for you, and then vessel donations. Program. There's just an absolute basic truth to Sea Scouts that we need to remember, and that is the key to a successful Sea Scout ship is leadership and positive thinking. The boat is not the program. The boat supports the program by providing a source of ship identity, a training platform, allows Scouts to see beyond the horizon, and gives the program form and substance. It gives it a direction. It gives it a sense of unity. So the boat is very important to a program, but it is not the program itself. And Sea Scout leaders need to keep that in mind and looking at boats. Now, the benefits of a boat. You have William Menninger's Clubhouse Theory. Now, Menninger was perhaps the most successful Sea Scout skipper in our history. He was from Kansas. He founded the Menninger Clinic, and as a member of the National Sea Scout Committee in the 1930s, wrote the Handbook for Skippers, which is one of the best books on leadership for Sea Scout volunteers. And in the Handbook for Skippers, he discusses the Clubhouse Theory of being in Sea Scouts, that it's that communal sense of belonging. It's part of you. When I think of a boat, and I've seen many Sea Scout ships that have this quality to them, is the boat is their enterprise. I call this the enterprise effect, because if you work on a boat, if you are sanding fiberglass or welding steel or sanding wood, it becomes part of you, and you love it just like it was your enterprise. And it's a fascinating effect to watch with Sea Scout leaders and Scouts across the United States. It also creates a wonderful feeling of esprit de corps, because it's something to belong to. This is our boat. I've worked on these, in these bilges. I've taken apart this engine. I have re-step the mast, whatever, happens with that boat that you work on, you develop an extreme sense of belonging to it with everyone that you work with. And so that esprit de corps factor is extremely powerful in having a boat that becomes the nucleus of it. Now, in the days when most councils still owned boats and there was lots of government surplus available, Boy Scout councils required feasibility studies. These are still a best practice when considering to get a boat, because you can't just go out and say, I want a 150-foot boat, And we have no means of taking care of it, no place to keep it, and we certainly can't afford it. So doing a feasibility study is extremely important before acquiring any type of boat. So questions to ask and have answers for. What is your experience with this kind of boat? If you grew up on small sailboats and you want to go get a 100-foot power boat, are you ready for that? Is that something that's within your skill set? You have to look at the leader's past experiences. Do they have experiences with maintenance on these type of vessels? Does the chartered partner support getting this vessel? Does the council support getting this vessel? And so these are questions that you have to put this report together and have answers for all these things and solicit input from the chartered partner, the council, and make sure that it's going to comply with all the rules that we have to provide a safe program for Scouts. So, more feasibility questions. How will you use the boat? Valid to ask. If you are up in a river and you want to get a boat that's good for ocean cruising, how frequently are you going to do ocean cruising? Is this something that's going to be an annual event? If so, maybe you want something that's smaller that you can use on the rivers. Where do you want to cruise or sail? Again, valid question of where does this need to go? How will you fund it? Where will you moor it? And do you have sources for fuel? And can you afford the fuel if you're getting a large power boat? Additional feasibility questions. What will it cost to insure the boat? Can you insure it? Do you have berthing that will comply with our youth protection requirements? Are there haul-out facilities? If the closest haul-out facility is in Mexico and you're based in San Francisco, that's a problem. So consider that when you are looking at a boat. Now, does the vessel require modifications for Sea Scout use? Ask. Think about that. Will this work for you? Many vessels do need to be modified when it comes to cruise quarters. I've yet to see a Sea Scout vessel that's ready-made for, proper Sea Scout berthing requirements. Some come very close, but there's always some modification, always bunks that need to be built in, especially if you have a co-ed crew, being able to go, do we have to modify this, and if so, how? Now, if you want to do modifications on deck, like adding an aft cabin, will that require a stability report? Do you have the people who can do said stability report? And after looking at that stability report, could you actually do the modifications that you want? Then you have vessel inspections. Every Sea Scout boat must pass a Coast Guard auxiliary vessel safety inspection. Fact of life. Every one of our boats has to do that. If a boat is taking passengers for hire, like operating as a charter, it must be able to pass a Coast Guard inspection and be under Subchapter T. And that's an entirely different set of regulations where you have licensed operators, and that's beyond the scope of this material. But those are questions to ask. Now, I just outlined a lot of challenges, but the key is to be positive. If you have this goal of acquiring a boat for your program, optimism is a powerful ally because every problem has a solution, and it requires focusing and determining what are the solutions to the basic questions that I've just presented on conducting a feasibility study. Let's consider the benefits of a large vessel, and there are many benefits to a big boat. The entire crew is on one vessel, so you start creating that esprit de corps and everyone's together. You have berthing issues worked out as well because everyone's there and you've solved that problem. It's a fantastic team building tool for doing, say, man overboard recovery operations, other drills that you could do underway as well. It's just a fantastic tool for team building. It also allows you to see beyond the horizon, so you can say, we are going over there. We're not just operating in a small sailboat in our little lake or just on our river, and we don't go beyond eyesight, but you can set a goal and go someplace. And that ability to do distance cruising or distance sailing is very powerful in offering adventure to Sea Scouts. And it also offers better protection against the elements because it's a big boat, whether it's steel or aluminum or wood or fiberglass, and everyone's protected because of the size of the vessel and the cabins, and everyone can be inside if you do have weather come up. Now, there are drawbacks to large vessels, big drawbacks. You have to have the experience to operate that vessel. You have to find mooring for the vessel. There are some Sea Scout ships that have mooring, but they are limited by the tide on when they can leave and when they can come back. You have to have haul-out facilities. This becomes expensive very quickly, especially if boat yards do not let Sea Scouts do their own work. You could be out of the water for just a few days and have a $30,000 haul-out bill. And that sort of thing can be very destructive to a Sea Scout program, especially if you only have 10 kids. You also have to look at insurance requirements. If the vessel is privately owned, you have insurance challenges that you have to meet in order to comply with the Boy Scout requirements to have Sea Scouts on a privately owned vessel, which means it has to have private insurance, and then it can have BSA insurance that covers it when it is used in a Sea Scout capacity. And then you have to look at the cost to operate the boat. Boats cost money, fuel. All the hardware needs to be maintained. You just can't have it sit there like a car and hope it starts up. Boats require maintenance, and you have to know what you are doing to make sure it is properly taken care of, and they can be expensive. Now let's discuss small boats. You do have greater ease of use with these vessels. There's generally lower mooring fees because they are shorter in length. Maintenance costs can go down per boat, but if you have 5 small boats, you've now multiplied all the costs several times, and you could be looking at the same cost of operating a big boat program because you have enough. You also look at haul-out facilities, generally easier to find haul-out facilities for a smaller boat. You can even take this a step further and look at things such as kayaks, lasers, CFJs, paddle boards, because all of those can be kept in a garage. And while that would change the nature of your Sea Scout program to a very small boat, those are a lot of fun. And every Sea Scout boat, whether you are a sailboat or a big power boat, should have those small boats such as paddle boards and kayaks and canoes because they are instant fun. Just drop them in the water and go. Now let's talk about the drawbacks of small boats. You have more than one boat to maintain. So you multiply your problems and challenges because one small sailboat might have an engine problem. The other one might have a damaged mast that has to be replaced. And all those costs get multiplied across the entire fleet that you maintain. You also have youth scattered across several boats. This raises multiple challenges because you do need to be able to comply with youth protection requirements. So you have to consider that. You also have the potential that instead of having one crew, you have multiple cliques, which could be dangerous. If people all identify with one small boat as opposed to another, that you have the senior crew versus the junior crew, and that gives them priority in what kind of boat that they get to go out and use. So there are challenges there that leaders need to be aware of, but if you know about it, you can be ready for it and you can make sure it doesn't happen. But the greatest challenge to having a small boat is youth protection. When you look at our youth protection requirements, you need separate berthing for youth and adults and genders. If you're on a 36-foot sailboat and you have a co-ed crew, that's going to get hard very quickly. So how do you combat that? Because a curtain doesn't count for a separate berthing compartment. And you see some Sea Scout Sea Scout ships have multiple vessels. And so you have all the boys on one boat and all the girls on the other. which again can have the effect of dividing the crew. So these are things to consider, and there are solutions to them. Many will have an integrated sail day where the youth are on their sailboats and cruising and sailing, and when they get to a destination and they secure for the night, one gender's on one boat, the other gender's on the other, and everything works. But these are the things that you have to consider in ensuring you comply with youth protection, and that's probably the greatest challenge to small boats. Well, let's talk about the right kind of boat for you and your Sea Scout ship. Well, it depends heavily on your program and what kind of program you want to maintain. Where are you located? Are you upriver? Are you on the coast? Are you on a lake? All of those things can determine the type of boat or boats you want. And you also have to consider where you want to set sail to. If you live on the California or Oregon or Washington coast, you might want a bigger boat because you're right on the ocean, and a small boat just wouldn't be practical. Sometimes you might find a small boat would be perfectly fine, but if you want a larger boat, it might make more sense because of the weather. Just the sea state would dictate you're going to want something in the 50-foot range or larger. On the flip side, if you're on the river, you might want something smaller, something that doesn't have a lot of draft to it, so you can get into all those places on the river that have adventure waiting for you to take your Sea Scouts. You also have to look at the goals. You might want a big boat and you run it as a summer camp, and you invite Sea Scouts from all over to cruise with you places, and that's your focus. And so you have to think about what are the program goals for our Sea Scout ship. Where do we want to sail to? Where do we want to cruise to? And find that right boat that fits your goals. Now, there are different sources of vessels donations. The government, this can be done. It has been done recently in working through all the different surplus requirements, but it does take a lot of hard work and can take months. Private individuals donate small boats quite frequently, and so if you want to get a 30-something sailboat, that's fairly common these days to get. Almost on a monthly basis, these become available from donors who are looking to divest a sailboat that they've had. Corporations sometimes donate vessels as well, and that's something to look for. One of the most unique was an oil company about 13 years ago that wanted to donate a 65-foot submarine. Everyone said no, because no one felt qualified, looking at all the requirements for a feasibility study, to take a submarine where we would take other people's children out to sea. Vessel ownership. There are many ways boats can be owned. Well, primarily privately owned, which requires insurance and then the liability requirements that follow that, and council owned. Now, when you look at a privately owned vessel, you have to have insurance on it, period, end of discussion. The BSA insurance kicks in when you have Sea Scouts on board engaged in the Sea Scout activity. So insurance is just a fact of life that you have to have with a privately owned vessel, and a lot of Sea Scout ships do this because they have their chartered partner or a 501c3 own their boats. The other form of ownership we see is council-owned, and you can get the BSA insurance for a council-owned vessel that Sea Scouts then pay on an annual basis, probably quarterly with the way most councils operate. Unfortunately, the BSA insurance does not cover the hull. So if you might want to look at additional insurance, and some councils have done that in being able to add additional insurance to protect the vessels. Now the fear, and this is why a lot of Sea Scout ships went to privately owned vessels, was the risk of sale. There's the fear that a Boy Scout council would sell the primary vessel of a Sea Scout ship to make a profit. This gets into other issues of having proper relationships with the councils, doing things so the councils know that these boats are a benefit to you. And when you look at the success of the councils that still have privately owned vessels, they would never consider selling a primary vessel of a unit to make a profit. It's just not in their nature. But these are things to consider, and there are many councils across the country, and just one of those things that you have to look at on what's the right type of vessel ownership for your Sea Scout ship. Well, let's look at a success story, and this is a success story of a council-owned vessel. And it's the Intrepid of Palo Alto from the Pacific Skyline Council. The Intrepid wanted a new boat, and one of their volunteers found a boat from the Navy outside of Seattle. Well, the council went to work with the volunteers, and it was a good partnership. And even the council attorney got involved and worked through the labyrinth of requirements to get this boat donated. That council attorney deserves a medal for all of his hard work in helping Sea Scouts. The executive board passed a couple resolutions to get the vessel as well, which were part of the requirements. And it was a Herculean story of the council doing things to support a Sea Scout ship, and those Sea Scout volunteers putting in lots of long hours, going up to Seattle to look at the vessel and do work on it. All the while, the Sea Scout ship continued to do their weekly activities and providing program for their youth. Their council helped them in doing press releases and got lots of press coverage in the local papers when they were actually able to bring the ship down from Seattle down to the San Francisco Bay Area. Now, the vessel is named the Olympic Venture, and so it was a wonderful story of they got the vessel down, they maintained the program for several months while they were working on bringing this new vessel down. Professional mariners and Sea Scout leaders brought the vessel down from Seattle to San Francisco, but they actually worked in a trip for the Scouts to go up to Seattle and cruise around Seattle, and had a weekend up in Seattle where they got to spend time with their new boat, cruise in an area that they had never cruised in before, and it was an absolutely wonderful success story of not just how to acquire a vessel, but to maintain your Sea Scout program and work with your Boy Scout Council to deliver quality program for youth. Just absolutely wonderful. And many of the executive board members who helped cruised down from San Francisco back to their home port in Redwood City. A great success story of people working together. So with that, this concludes how to put together a feasibility study, how to look at the right type of boat for your program, and I wish you all the best in having a successful Sea Scout ship. Thank you.